We all need friends. Friends are a necessary component of life, aren't they? And you think to yourself when you're a very, very small child, your first images of friends. I remember when I was, maybe 2 or 3 years old, I had a friend, her name was Pam Davidson, and she would come over and we had a lot of fun together. And then one time, I had this enormous table with a lot of toy soldiers all set up. My father had made this table, and these two armies are going to fight, and she accidentally touched the table, and the war was over. Half my army died immediately, which produced shock. I began to scream, she began to cry. She ran into my house, my mother phoned her mother, and you know how it goes. We had difficulties, so my friendship with this beautiful young woman ended rather quickly, if I remember. So I'm just teasing, of course. But friends are necessary, and this becomes a bit of a problem, doesn't it? Because the quality of our friends over time could potentially grow or diminish depending on the social circle that we choose to enter into. And if we find bad friends, what's the old idiom? Birds of a feather flock together. So if we have bad friends and we're a bit insecure and perhaps one of our friends is a bit better looking or more worldly, whatever it is, we can very quickly get pulled into the wrong orbit. And this is where I think the male figure in our society is extremely important, because your father will correct your behavior. And so if you have bad friends, he will stop those friends, won't he? You'll stop the relationship and he will allow you to nurture new friends. I was watching a program with Denzel Washington once, the very famous actor, because Denzel Washington obviously is black. And he said that when he was growing up in high school, he had 6 friends, plus himself, 7. So together they were a team, 7 people. And the other 6 boys didn't have a father. And they all ended up in prison. In prison. And Denzel Washington went on to be this famous, renowned actor. And the other boys grew up into men and got the wrong friends, obviously. In the black community, I've read that only 1 in 8 families actually has a father today. And so obviously you need a father figure. So you're going to find a local, perhaps gangster or whatever, and you're going to slowly get nurtured into the wrong situation. And I mean, it even gets worse. So let's say, for instance, that you end up with bad friends, right? And so then those bad friends produce the necessary results, and for whatever reason you get arrested by the police and you're removed from those friends for a period of time. And then you will return, obviously, to your suburb or your community or your city or whatever it is, and you're obviously going to associate with the same group of friends. So you never get out, really, do you? This recidivism is enormous in prisons because obviously those are our friends, aren't they? And so I guess it comes back to the old story. I must be my own best friend first. I must at some point have a talk with myself and say, Leon, however you're feeling about you in the exterior world, you better have a chat with yourself. You need a couple of things here, right? You need to answer these 3 questions. Why am I here? What's my mission? What's going to happen to me when I die? And if the circumstances seem quite incorrect relative to your life, You have to change your reality. You have no choice. Or just be like so many fools in life. Go along with the sheep and go over the edge as they all keep running over the cliff, right? But if you don't want that, you better talk to yourself. You know, if we go way back in history, Aristotle, he basically broke friendships into three types. One was the friendship of utility. Those are the friends that will perhaps at a store, they will help you get a job, this sort of thing. Then you have perhaps the friendship of pleasure. These are people you can go dancing with, you can go drinking with, jogging with, whatever. And then you end up with real friends, friends that you love, basically. They're like your own family in that extent, right? And I think those are the kinds of friendships that probably will be redeeming. I have two friends, for instance, that I've had for over 50 years. And this is an interesting phenomenon because both are getting on in years. I guess I am as well, but I'm pretty healthy. I'm lucky. But one of my friends is 95 years old. I mean, that's pretty old. So obviously, he's going to be transiting at some time in the near future, right? Obviously, my other friend, he's not as healthy, perhaps as I am. So, these are precious gems and you will not replace them, for sure. So, conversation the other day came up in class. Let's say, for instance, I have absolutely no friends now. I'm getting a bit on in years, and for whatever reason, my social circle has changed. Either it's changed because I've moved, relocation, or it's changed because perhaps my friends have died, they've passed on. What do? Well, I think you have to create social circumstances that you meet new people. You have to go to school again, for instance, or you need to get a job, or perhaps you need to join some form of community center or take on some activity, whatever it is, but you obviously are going to have to increase the people pool. You're going to need more associations, right? Because without friendship, we inevitably die, in a sense. No, I know there are very holy people, there are monks that live in the mountains, but they have another friendship. They have a friendship with the divine, with God. And I understand this kind of friendship. I don't have it. I do say my prayers and all that, but this divine friendship is something that requires years of study to properly find that relationship, I am sure. But it exists, of course. But unless you're willing to put in the study, you're going to need earthly friends. So think to yourself that I'm going to find good quality friends, men and women, of course, that are going to nurture me forward, because friendship is a wonderful thing, and without it, I don't grow. I guess initially when you begin a friendship, you test each other. So David and I had, 45 days on the Camino. I guess that was a test of friendship, wasn't it? So think this to yourself. We need friends, but we need good friends. But the first person I must be friends with is, of course, myself. And then I think I need a relationship with God, Gaia, or the universe. And then, of course, I need earthly friends, decent men and women that can help me grow. So, you know what they say. You need friendships if you're going to grow, and critical thinking is great. Truly great. You take care. God bless. Bye-bye. Hello, Leon here. Well, today is the 2nd of July. It's a Wednesday, and the temperature, if you can believe this, was as low as 22. It was overcast, windy, and cold. And I've always read that the trip is unpredictable, and this is totally true. So today we're going to talk a little bit about friendship, because friendship is something that is really important in one's life. But the question begins, of course, who is my best friend? And that answer always has to be, of course, me. Why? Because ultimately, I know me. I can reach out, I can touch you, but can I feel the inside of you when you're with anxiety, frustration, pain, anger? The answer, of course, is no. You are isolated in your own mind. You are alone. And that's not a negative statement at all. It is something really positive. So, what I saw today as we walked were many groups of people talking together. It was really a pleasurable day. And I'll leave you with a thought that Aristotle said that we have three types of friends ultimately: friends of utility. Perhaps these would be friends that we need at work. These are useful to help us when we go to the post office, etc. Then we have friends of pleasure. Perhaps we play golf with these people, or we play badminton, or some type of sports. And then ultimately, the perfect friendship. Now, the perfect friendship is one where you truly love each other and understand each other. And this is true whether you're a man or a woman, right? You care for each other. And I have a friend like this in Poland. We've been friends for 50 years, Stanisław Kosz. But I also have wonderful friends that helped me with my book, Boyu Chen and Luke Lin. So friendships are a wonderful thing. My walking partner, David Alwyn,
Yeah, fine.
you can see that friendships are important. So, what is one to do in all of this confusing world that we live in? Well, I think the first thing, once again, is we must find that inner peace inside myself. That's why I recommend these types of walks. They're rather lengthy, but they're and rather strenuous, but they are good. And today we saw many fabulous sights along the way. Saw some ants of all things once again, carrying grain, pieces of grain into their hives. So wonderful things here, wonderful things. So friendship, think about it. Now to Dave.
Yes. So today, as Leon and I were walking on El Camino, we were walking through a small town and looking around, thinking about what we were going to have to eat for lunch. Unlike the previous days, we arrived a little bit later. It was about 1:30, and this was our last chance to get something to eat before the long stretch, before reaching our final destination for the day. And we're looking around, and lo and behold, someone comes up to us, and we look. Who is it? Oh, it is Lorenzo, an Italian gentleman who has been walking on this pilgrimage as well. We had met him back a few stops back at one of the other places where we had stayed the night. And since then, we've kind of been seeing him off and on throughout our adventure. We saw him a few days later and a few days after that, and a friendship quickly emerged. As Leon said, there are different kinds of friendships, and this friendship may be one of opportunity, it might be one of pleasure, and as we progress further on our journey, we will probably see him again at some point. There was another man in which we had the same situation, a man named Rodrigo. We met him earlier back, and every time we see him, he is always so happy to see us. Once again, we walk with him together, we talk about interesting things. Maybe we sit down and have a coffee together or something on this journey, and we encourage each other. This is once again friendship.
So, when you think of your perfect friend, I think we have to think, what does this mean? It means that that solipsistic wall, that wall that exists between people, is broken down, and you're like close brothers, if you can put it that way. You truly understand each other and what's going on. And in my life, as all human beings, there have been crises in my life, and friends at that point are so very important. And my friend Stash was just always a listener. He always listened to what I had to say, and I appreciated it because he didn't judge what I was doing. And I think this is a very important component of life. You need friends that can talk to you and guide you because ultimately, who's my teacher? Myself. So, this is why we must find all this resource material to put into our brains to understand what life is about, right? Very important. So, 3 questions. Why am I here? What is my mission? What happens when I leave here? And please, you take care. God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.